Now, the rand has taken a knock with the outbreak of violence and looting. I'm joined now by our business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa. A very good afternoon to you, Xolani. Now, there have been many organizations that have warned South Africa recently about the country being top of the list of nations that face civil unrest in 2021. Take us through this.
Yes, Alliance and Euler Hermes joined forces to actually do a study of social risk index where they actually measure what could actually lead to social unrest. And this was February this year, and we did do the story then. And at that time, they said in the next 18 months, our South Africa is primed for social unrest. Now, they talked about a number of things: the declining GDP, unemployment, high income inequality, unemployment, particularly among the youth, the average being 25 years old. And they said that South Africa in the next 18 months should actually expect that any sort of public or civil unrest is going to be hijacked by those who feel dissatisfied. And this is what has happened here, because when you talk to the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry today, when they released their statement, they said these protests actually precede the Jacob Zuma Constitutional Court sentence of 15 months. So we've seen in Moy River over the past couple of years those freight companies being disrupted, trucks being looted and stopped on the main road. So it precedes, our unrest precedes that. And they also said that our service delivery protests are actually showing how primed we are as a country for such unrest to actually take place. But since then, Thami, we've heard from a number of organizations, the World Bank, the IMF, and ratings agencies have also said the very same thing about South Africa being at the top of the list of countries that should expect civil unrest to actually, an outburst of civil unrest to actually take place because of what COVID-19 has done to the economy. Many people unemployed, hunger, rising. So this should not come as a shock at all, because there is documented proof and research that actually shows that this sort of unrest is going to take place, particularly here in South Africa.
So what does this then mean, Xolani? Does it mean that South Africa was going to go through the type of unrest that we're seeing now, whether it was going to be the issue of unemployment spilling over, whether it was going to be the issue of service delivery protests spilling over? Were we just at the tipping point, waiting for what a writer would call an inciting incident?
If you were to read the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry statement, coupled with all the other reports that have been released, that's exactly it. It's actually dissatisfied people, unemployed people, people who are going through hardships right now, using this opportunity to take for themselves what they will. And the interesting thing about South Africa and how it's actually planned, the township planning, there's a lot of these malls that are built close to the communities, and that's the first place people will go to actually loot and actually take what they think they deserve. So many of these people, according to the research that's been done, have nothing, in their hearts where they, are doing this because of former President Jacob Zuma being behind bars. They are just taking the opportunity to get what, they think is they deserve. So there would have been a lot of people who would have hijacked whatever instability there would have been there. So it would have, what I'm trying to say is it did not have to take the protest starting in KZN and the Jacob Zuma unhappiness that could have been there to actually have these unrests take place. What is important, though, for business, and what the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry has called for, is that this needs to stop. Law enforcement agencies need to get in there. And we actually heard from the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry calling on the president to send the SANDF. That just shows you how deeply problematic the situation has become, because if this continues, it's going to have serious ramifications for our economy, because right now, when you ask organizations how much have these unrest cost the economy, they just keep saying we're still counting the cost.
And those costs continue to be counted as the looting continues, as cars, continue to be burnt and stores continue to be broken into. I guess the challenge of this moment, Xolani, is to be able to discern the economics of the matter from the politics of the matter. I think the twain have merged at some point here. But let's go to the impact that this looting and the protests and this instability, the impact that that has had on the rand so far.
So on the rand so far, we've seen, and we spoke to Preceding earlier on, you are going to see the rand actually taking a knock because of perceptions that about where this is going for South Africa. Investors are looking at this and thinking, maybe I should wait to actually invest whatever I was thinking of investing in the capital markets or physically in the country. And those who have actually invested in the country are going in the rand itself are going to be pulling off. We might see a rand sell-off depending on how this is actually, how long this unrest continues. What is important for the country is to demonstrate that we have the situation as under control as South Africa, and this is not going to, spiral out of control as it has today. And actually, we find it in other provinces. So what is most important to demonstrate for everyone in the country and those who have a vested interest in how the rand does is to actually make sure that we handle the situation and actually put a stop to it as soon as possible, because as long as it continues, it puts a dampener on our economic recovery, something that we've been talking about for months since the advent of COVID-19. So what we've seen today is just a snapshot of what we could see in the coming days if the situation is not rested.
Xolani Mbanjwa, thank you very much for that economic update on how the current situation that we're experiencing is influencing and affecting the rand as well as the country's economic standing with investors. What you're seeing now are still live visuals coming to you from Jabulani Mall in Soweto, still rampant looting. It's been going on for over 2 hours now. And it still remains unabated, but we do see police presence there on the ground. As Xolani Mbanjwa says, business has asked for the SANDF to be deployed, and that is exactly what's going to happen. We'll have an in-depth briefing regarding how the deployment of the SANDF will indeed unfold a little bit later on today.